Texas. Also, please mute your video or your noise. This video is being recorded. So as I said, I'm the cafe manager for Plano, Texas. I'm here. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm not a chef, so I'm going to talk about sustainability and how my family personally practices that. We do have backyard chickens, so I brought a special guest to come help me talk about it. Um, since we are practicing sheltering in place, I didn't have to go too far for my guest. Um, this is Marcy Lindsay. She is my mother.
Hi, everybody.
um,
Hello.
she's here to help me talk about her backyard chickens, how they are sustainable, and we are doing a video here in a few minutes. I'm interviewing her on how she does it. If this is something interested you want to do, it kind of gives you tips and tricks about that as well. If you want to talk about where we are currently.
Sure. We live in Wahlberg, Texas, and Hannah's just sheltering in place with us right now. But Wahlberg is actually about 30 miles north of Austin, Texas. And so it's a small
Okay.
German farming community with a couple of beer gardens. And so we bought some property, an old house that we've remodeled, and ended up adding some chickens to our place out here recently. So I'm learning, but I've learned a lot in the last few months.
Awesome. So what we're going to do before we start off this video, we're going to start with a safety moment. Since we are talking about chickens, I thought, why not talk about egg safety? So here's some tips on how to keep your eggs safe, I guess you could say. Make sure to always clean your hands and surfaces when handling raw eggs, just to try to eliminate that cross-contamination. When you are shopping for eggs in the grocery store, make sure and keep your eggs away from the other products that you're buying. When you get your eggs home from the grocery store, make sure you're keeping them between 33 and 40 degrees. And then when you are buying fresh eggs, like from your local farmer's market, make sure when you have them on the counter, they are good for up to a month. Some are good for longer, but I always use a month just as a happy medium. So without further ado, I will start the video. And again, if you're just now joining, please mute your audio.
Okay, first question. Why did you want to get some chickens for your backyard?
When we first moved to Wahlberg, the house we purchased needed to be renovated and remodeled, and it had an old chicken coop on the property. So we kind of knew we wanted to get chickens at some point, but we spent most of our time remodeling the house. And so we just, at Christmas time, my husband gave me a coop, and we were able to start thinking about adding some backyard chickens to our property.
So where did you get these chickens from?
My first chicken was actually a rescue chicken. My neighbor down the street found out we had gotten a new coop and we're looking at getting some chickens, and she had just gotten a chicken and tried to introduce it to an existing flock, and they were really picking on this chicken. And so anyway, she asked me if I wanted it, and so I took it. And it was our first chicken. It's a Plymouth Rock chicken, and it's the black and white chicken in the pictures you can see. We then ordered two more chickens from our local feed and supply place in a small town near us. And so they didn't have any immediately, but they called me when they had some in. And what we ended up getting are pullets, which are hens that are about 4 to 5 months old. And they have feathers, but they're just young, kind of young teenagers. And so that's a little bit easier to start than having to raise them chickens from chicks. Our brown chicken is called what is called a sex-linked chicken, and so when they're young, you can tell that it's going to be a hen, and they're also bred to be laying hens. So that particular chicken will lay an egg every day, whereas our black and white chicken, the Plymouth Rock chicken, will lay an egg maybe 3 times a week or 4 times a week on a good week.
Tell me about the coop and the area they stay in.
For Christmas, my husband ordered a coop online from Amazon, so it was my Christmas gift, um, and was delivered to our front porch. So it's a really small coop, and we added some fencing around it just to get us started. So once getting our 3 chickens in the coop and a fence kind of put around their coop, we shortly realized that chickens can fly. And what they would do is they would hop on top of their coop and then fly out of the fenced in area. And so it's kind of developed into us buying a fenced um, I don't know, cover that you can see in the pictures where it has kind of a netting around the sides and on the top, and then it has a tarp over part of it, which is nice because it keeps part of their area dry, on rainy days, which is good.
What is something interesting you've learned so far?
One interesting thing I didn't know is that a chicken really doesn't start laying eggs until it's about 6 months old. So if you end up buying chicks, just be prepared that you're gonna, wait 6 months before you start having eggs. So it was kind of a good deal to get a pullet because it's only a month or two before they begin laying.
What do the chickens eat? And do you feed them anything?
Our chickens pretty much stay in their coop while we're at work, and then in the evenings when we come home, we'll let them out and they can wander around the yard and forage bugs and eat plants and insects and anything they find. They scratch around in the dirt and eat even small pebbles. And so anyway, it's kind of fun that they wander around and they put themselves back up in their coop when the sun starts going down. In addition to the bugs and the plants the chickens are eating, we feed them some scratch, which is some seeds, and then a laying feed that you can get at a feed store, and then also some calcium, either oyster shells or crushed up eggshells.
In what ways are chickens sustainable?
We save scraps from the kitchen, and the chickens love any leafy green scraps that we have left over. And in addition, we can take when we clean out the cage, we can add that to our composting pile. And after about 8 weeks, it's decomposed enough to use it as fertilizer in our garden. Another cool thing is the chicken eggs of chickens that are able to forage around are higher in protein and lower in cholesterol. So that's kind of a cool plus.
Okay, so I hope y'all enjoyed our little video. Um, just to kind of reiterate, how they are sustainable is they do so once you feed them their feed and stuff like that, it can then turn into like natural composting. Um, 8 weeks later, then you can have fertilizer, which they do have a garden back in the yard. So they do use that for their garden. It has a lot more nutrients in it as well. And then again, the eggs are healthy. They use a lot more nutrients in the eggs when they're farm fresh. Some of the things that go into them, there's 2/3 more vitamin A in farm fresh eggs than there are in regular grocery bought eggs, as well as 3 times more vitamin E. And the list goes on and on. I mean, when you look on Google, you can search for hours on just how much better they are for you. Also, if your chickens are happy and healthy, that's a huge thing. They lay more eggs. The eggs taste better. They look better. So that's also a plus. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, we were just talking about a minute ago when you get eggs in the grocery store and look at them, they're kind of the yolk is a lighter yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And at first we were, when we had our eggs, it's kind of disconcerting just because they're so bright. It's a darker yellow or a brighter orange with the fresh eggs. And so you get used to it and it's kind of cool, but you can tell that there's a difference. And I think it's just that they're actually eating, foraging for bugs and protein and stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Another thing that is interesting as well is each chicken has their own color
that
they lay. So one of our chickens, we actually have the eggs right here. He lays, or she lays more of like a more brown egg, and they are a bit bigger. Whereas our Plymouth Rock chicken, Elsa, she lays more of a lighter, kind of a smaller, more delicate egg. So that's kind of interesting. Each chicken has their own way of doing things.
Well, there's also, I'm kind of wanting to add to our group of chickens, and there's chickens called Easter eggers and Americanas, and they actually lay green and blue colored eggs, which I think would be super fun. So that's kind of what's coming next for our chicken flock.
And for the holidays.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll kind of look at some questions. Here. Do different kinds of chickens lay different tasting or richer eggs than others?
I don't know. I don't know if I can tell the difference. They're different on the outside. The coloring is different, but on the inside, particularly since both of our chickens are eating the same things, the coloring on the inside is just the same, and I haven't noticed a difference in the taste. So not discernibly.
Mm-hmm. And then, do they like being held?
No. They do let me hold them, and they'll kind of squat down, if you're feeding them something, and they let you hold them. They don't probably like it that much, but sometimes I do it just for fun. But they're fairly friendly. One of them more than the other, and particularly if you have treats, they'll let you do it.
They're very awkward. It's all bones. It's weird.
Well, one thing before I had really been around chickens is their feet and their talons are kind of, intimidating. But I thought maybe if I picked them up, they would, move their feet and scratch me. But they really don't.
They freeze.
Yeah, so it's fine.
Let's see. Do chickens still lay eggs if there's
Yeah. This is a weird thing because they just lay unfertilized eggs, basically. And so it's eggs that you would, scramble or whatever. If you have a rooster and then you're trying to raise chickens, then they would lay fertilized eggs and you could hatch chickens. But we don't have a rooster, and we're just interested in the, breakfast eggs. So.
Just to clarify, the rooster is the male and the hen is the female.
That's right.
Perfect. What is your favorite way to eat eggs? So personally, I like eating hard-boiled eggs. I think they're easy, they're fast. I don't have to dirty anything making them. Um,
Well, since we had a bunch of eggs, I've been making breakfast casseroles. And either with, sometimes with ham and jalapenos and eggs and cheese, or like a sausage, eggs and cheese. And so when I have extra eggs, I'll just make one of those and put it in the freezer and we'll pull it out, on a weekend or something like that. So I think that's what I like to do with them.
yeah. And then, what are your chickens' names?
Do you want to
You
answer
can answer
that?
it.
So we had help from Hannah's brother's kids, my grandkids, and so the black and white one is named Elsa from Frozen. And then she had a sister who's no longer with us, had a mishap with a predator. And so her name was Anna. And then my grandson named the other one Nugget. So we have Chicken Nugget. And so anyway, those are their names.
How often do they lay eggs?
So Anna, or Elsa, she lays about 3 eggs a week, I would say. And the Nugget lays every day. So we're kind of excited when we go out there and there's, 2 eggs, 3 or 4 times a week. And then every day there's at least 1 egg. And so, and that's with 2. When we have 3, the brown ones are the ones that lay every day. So if you had 2 of the chickens, the sex-linked chickens that are bred to lay, you'd have a good group of eggs just with 2 chickens.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of chickens.
Let's see. What are your mom's favorite way to cook eggs?
Yeah, well, besides the casseroles, definitely here in Texas, we eat lots of breakfast tacos.
Oh, yeah.
And so I like to make my salsa recipe, and then we have scrambled eggs and bacon or eggs and sausage on a tortilla, flour tortilla.
Are they hard to maintain?
No, they're really not. I think the biggest thing probably is just inside their coop, they have a roost, which we didn't really talk about that, but they need a something wooden to stand on when they're sleeping, and that's how they sleep. They stand on either a bar or something, and so they stand on that roost, and when they're roosting at night is when they poop. And so that's kind of just the main thing, is keeping that clean. And then on the in their boxes, their laying boxes, just make sure they have fresh hay or whatever you're going to use. It can be shavings or whatever, but just kind of keeping that clean. Other than that, I think that's really, fresh water. They do eat laying feed when they're in their coop as a supplement. And the cool thing, and I think we mentioned in the video, is when it gets dark, they want to go back to their coop. One thing we've been working with them to train them is when we get ready to go somewhere, we want to put them up and not leave them out, is getting them to go in when it's not getting dark. And so we entice them with mealworms, basically, blackmail them to get in.
If you ever seen a chicken run, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
How much is it to buy a chicken?
Well, the investment is large. At Tractor Supply or your feed and supply, I think I paid $4 for my chicken. They tried to sell me a duck for $1. So
what a steal.
The actual chicken is not that expensive, but I guess the investment is either building or buying a coop and making sure it's secure from predators, possums, raccoons, coyotes, that kind of thing. And so having it covered on top and the sides is important. So anyway.
Perfect. Well, how much space do you need to raise chickens if you're limited?
Well, I have friends that actually have them in a, a regular neighborhood because their HOA allows it. In the city of Georgetown, which is kind of our small big city that we would go to for grocery shopping and stuff like that, they allow you to raise them in the city, in people's yards and stuff. And so it doesn't take a lot of space. And you can even, I don't know if y'all have seen this before, but they have tractor coops that kind of look like a little wheelbarrow. And so you can set it down, have your chickens in one area, and then you can pick it up and move it, so that, it doesn't tear up your entire yard all at once. But so chickens don't have to come out of the coop. A lot of chickens just stay in their coop or run, which would be the open area where they can kind of walk around. We just have some space and we don't have neighbors, so we'd let them roam around.
Here it says, what do they need if you live in an area that have cooler temps?
I've been reading about this just because when we got our first chicken, it was still in the winter. And I kind of was wondering, did they need a heat lamp or something like that? And everything I've read, and I don't know if this applies to Canada or something like that, but they said don't introduce a heat lamp for grown chickens. You would need that for chicks. But because they've been around forever, and if you introduce the heat lamp, then they will always need heat like that. So it's best to just get them acclimated into your area, and as far as I know, you don't need to heat them. So unless they're chicks, then you do.
How much do you spend for food, hay, etc. on average?
Ooh, well, I bought food and the bedding stuff in January. And then I haven't bought it again because it comes in pretty big packages or whatever. And I want to say it was like a 50-pound bag of the feed costs $13. So it's not expensive. And you just don't use that much for the small amount of chickens I have. So not a lot. It's not super expensive. I guess if you had a huge flock, that could add up. But we're not trying to sell eggs. We're not trying to, keep everybody in the neighborhood into eggs. Just it's enough for us to, it's cheaper than buying eggs for us, really.
Yeah.
So.
And then do all of the chickens get along?
Yeah. So what I found out is I had that rescue chicken, and then I introduced 2 younger chicks to her, and it was fine. And what I found out is you want to kind of introduce them, if you already have an existing flock, to introduce them in 2 or 3 more, not just one by itself, because that flock will pick on that one. And that's what was happening to the black and white chicken. Is I've learned that there's all these metaphors that people say are actually things chickens do. So like the pecking order and stuff like that is actually a real thing in the chicken world. So they were pecking and pulling her feathers out and stuff like that. I know. So you would want to introduce them. You can introduce them and it's fine, but introduce them as a small group to the existing flock, so they're not trying to just pick on, they don't have one, chicken to pick on, I guess.
And then here's a pretty good question to end on. Why did the chicken cross the road?
What came first, the chicken or the egg? So I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road?
And then, are they noisy, thinking of neighbors?
Yeah, so actually, different breeds are different, have different sounds they make. And our black and white one is really quiet, and I was super surprised about that because, when you talk about chickens and read books about chickens, you talk about all the sounds they make, and this one just made like a really quiet murmur type thing. But the other one does more of a traditional chicken sound. But there are chickens that are more quiet than others. So if you want to have them in a neighborhood and have neighbors that might complain, I would definitely research a breed, a quiet breed. When I was little, we had quackless ducks. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but they were really quiet. They didn't quack. And so it's a thing if you need quiet ones, they have breeds that are quiet.
Do you have any eggs to show us? Yes, we do. So we actually have them in a little measuring cup. But, so again, here's the ones that Chicken Nugget lays. Brown, a little bigger, and then you can always tell which ones are Elsa's because they're a little lighter and a bit prettier. But yeah, so this is what we have right now. This is probably a week.
Yeah,
about a week's worth. There's probably like 8 in there. So, okay, so I think we're all done. If any of y'all have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me over Slack or email. But yeah, I hope y'all have a great day and are staying safe.